What's cracking, everybody? Hello and welcome back to Gaming 101 with Mr. Berger. So guys, I maxed out my eBarbs. Finally, I gave in. I was like, you're sitting at about 4,000, 4,300 trophies, you know, pushing just above 4,300 at the end of seasons. I'm like, it's too late to max out those eBarbs and run eBarb Rage because, you know, they're not that great later in the game once you start reaching, you know, more advanced, higher level decks and more players that have a bunch of maxed cards. But I still went up against a bunch of people at this trophy range that were running eBarb's Rage. So I gave in, I hopped on the bandwagon, and I maxed out my eBarbs. They were sitting at level 12 already from a long time ago when they were really OP, but I went ahead and just invested in requesting them for a little while, put down that 100k that I had saved up, and I maxed them out. And it's pretty great. I like it. It's kind of gimmicky, and sometimes you can get countered real hard, but what I'm doing here is I'm kind of running this eBarb Rage Hog deck, and the idea behind this deck is that I'm using a bunch of highly leveled cards. You'll notice I only have one epic in this deck, and that's the Rage. And I have mixed feelings about the Rage. It was really good for a while. It used to cost a lot more and be a lot more powerful, and I feel like it's kind of underplayed. I feel like it has the potential to do really well, as do many of those utility spell cards like the heal or the clone or the freeze spell. But it's definitely found a resurgence lately. It kind of fell off the map for a bit. It's kind of like a joke card, or was a joke card, but honestly I feel like I've been seeing it more and more, at least around my trophy range. Of course at low trophy range you'll see it a lot because it's one of the few cards that are available, and it's definitely better in that particular meta, just in the same way that you'll see, you know, well, this is a bad example because there's a witch right there, but you'll see a witch a lot more often in lower arenas than you will in higher arenas. So the Rage spell, it combos really well with the eBarbs. They just run in so quickly and do so much damage so fast that if you pop it off right as you send them in at the bridge, or right as they're going across on the counter push, it generally allows them to connect to the tower before your opponent can react. That being said, like most utility spells, you kind of want to catch your opponent off guard, so the first use of your utility spell is usually the one that counts the most. So like that first heal, or that first clone, or that first freeze, or in this case, that first Rage. That's the one that counts the most. Because after a while, they'll know that you have the Rage. They'll know, they're like, okay, he's going to put the eBarbs at the bridge, and then he's going to Rage them. And they'll be ready for that. They'll be ready to counter that. So make sure that you make that first one count. And don't get me wrong, you can totally use it as an opening play. Sometimes you'll get that tower. You'll get the eBarbs at the bridge, Rage them, take out their Princess Tower, and just win by playing defense for the rest of the game. Win by one tower. It's totally possible. But on top of that, we have another win condition here, like I mentioned, the Hog. So I didn't want to rely fully on the eBarbs, because I feel like as much as I like those eBarbs and as powerful as they are, they're not a super reliable solo win condition. Like, the whole concept of the card, in my opinion, is they're very much like the E-Wiz. You play them on defense, or the Mega Knight, both of those cards that he just used there. You play them on defense, they're a very powerful defensive card that then provides a very deadly and powerful counter push, almost like the Lumberjack. He does a ton of damage, and then he runs really quickly, and if he connects to the enemy's tower, he just absolutely destroys it. So that's generally the concept of them, I feel like, but you can totally play them aggressively and just play them at the bridge, and then just allow them to run in and, you know, connect to the opponent's tower before they have time to react. Now, let's talk about the other cards that I have in here. Why did I put the Mega Minion in there? Well, there's a few reasons. The Mega Minion provides you some air counter. There's not a whole lot of air counter in this deck other than that, except of course the Minion Horde, but we'll get to that in a moment. So the Mega Minion, of course, for me, the main reason that I put it in there is because that was one of the cards that I had leveled up. All the cards here are common or rare, except of course for the Rage, as I mentioned earlier, being the only epic. So they're all very easy to level up because you can request them, and you can invest in them, and they're generally just easier to get and easier to level up. That's just how the game works, and due to all the algorithms and stuff. Commons are the easiest to level up, rares being the second easiest, so on and so forth. So the Mega Minion I had at level 9, the eBarbs I have maxed. Right now my Hog is level 10, and the Rage is only 5. But the Rage, I feel like, even if it's not leveled up that much, it still has the potential to do really well, because it still provides that really essential attack speed and move speed increase right when you need it. So like a couple split seconds more, yeah, that could maybe win you 1 or 2 matches, but you still have that 2 drop in there that provides you that massive increase in both attack and move speed. Now the Knight has long been my maxed card. It was my first max card, so I went ahead and put that in there, and it kind of provides a mini tank, and you'll see that quite often. You'll see me put the Knight in front, and then the eBarbs behind him, and they generally, because they run so quickly, they push him. Another really good unit to use there would be the Valkyrie in the place of the Knight, because she definitely tanks for them a little bit, and she also cleaves any swarm cards that they might be putting down, like a Goblin Gang or a Skeleton Barrel, because that's generally one of the go-to counters for eBarbs. So if you have a high-leveled Valkyrie, you could put them in there, but again, the main thing that I was focusing on with this deck was the eBarb's Rage, and then putting in a bunch of high-level cards that I had invested in, and trying to push on the ladder a little bit. It's definitely, for me, it's a ladder deck. You wouldn't want to run this in challenges, because eBarbs are, let's just face it, eBarb's Rage is just not that great in challenges. It's definitely a very powerful ladder concept. Really good in like the 2500, 3000 when you get eBarbs. Around then, on up to like 4300 and up. But once you get a little bit higher up again, I haven't experienced it myself, because my highest is like 4300 some at the moment. But I know that eBarbs kind of fall off the map, and you go up against a lot more meta decks. Alright, let's continue talking about the cards in here. I got the Zap as my 1 spell, and it's a light spell, and again, that was my second ever maxed card. And leveling up your Zap is definitely a very good thing to invest in, because it allows you to, at max level, it allows you to one-shot any Goblin Gangs, or any Goblins or Spear Goblins that are level 12 or lower. So basically anything that's 1 level lower than your Zap that's a Goblin will be instantly destroyed by it. Otherwise, if they're the same level as your Zap, the regular Goblins would live through that. Spear Goblins would still die, but the regular Goblins would live through it. It also allows you to one-shot Minion hordes that are 2 levels lower, or Minions. So you can see there's a perfect example. I zapped and it killed all of the Goblins there because they were 2 levels lower. Now, if I had zapped those Minions there, they wouldn't die, because they're level 12 and my Zap is level 13. So for Minions, they have to be 2 levels lower for them to be instantly killed. I have the Ice Spirit in there. It's long been one of my favorite cards as well. It's a level 12 common for me. I don't really want to invest in requesting it and leveling it up right now, because it kind of provides its role. It would be good to level up at some point, but I'd rather invest in other more, important and kind of core cards for the time being. And it provides you element of cycle. This is a pretty quick cycle-like deck, because you've got the Ice Spirit, which is 1 elixir cost, the Knight costs 3, and then the Rage and the Zap only cost 2, the Mega Minion only costs 3. Yeah, so it's pretty quick, and having that Ice Spirit also gives you the potential for a lot of positive elixir trades. So I really like that card, even though it did get nerfed pretty decently recently, and it was nerfed before that a while back. I feel like it still is a very powerful card with a lot of potential, given the fact that it only costs 1 elixir mainly. Alright, then of course lastly the Minion Horde. Now I actually did have Poison in the place of the Minion Horde, and I switched it out for the Minion Horde because I decided that I wanted to invest in leveling up another common up to level 12, and I had a few options. I was thinking maybe Bats, make it more of a cycle deck, but I was like, I don't really have any sort of like Zap bait, and that's generally how Bats are used, is in Zap bait like decks. So I felt like they would just always get zapped all the time. So I went ahead and went with the Minion Horde. Now that being said, there isn't too much spell bait, so they will generally like Fireball or Poison or Zap your Minion Horde, but that of course removes that out of the equation then from them using it against like your Mega Minion, or more importantly your eBarbs. So the Minion Horde, I'm just kind of experimenting with it. I might switch it back out for something else, but for the time being, it's working out pretty well for me, and I'm definitely enjoying it. And I feel like it could definitely be replaced by another spell. As I mentioned earlier, I was running poison, and that provides you an option to answer things like pumps or finish off a princess tower if it's got just a sliver of health left. Now, having the hog and the eBarbs in here is kind of like your win conditions. It gives you kind of like an element of, how would I say this, almost counter bait. So, for example, a go-to counter for a hog would be a mini P.E.K.K.A. or a P.E.K.K.A. Pretty hard counter to a hog. Now, those are also hard counters to the eBarbs. So, if they've used their P.E.K.K.A. or their mini P.E.K.K.A. out on your hog, or even on the eBarbs, then you switch it out and you send in the other shortly after. Well, they don't have that in cycle. And it's interesting. This is something that I've been experimenting with this deck, having those two win conditions in there. And it's been working out pretty well. So you see them waste their mini P.E.K.K.A., then you send in your hog shortly after. Or vice versa, like I mentioned earlier, you see them use their mini P.E.K.K.A. and you've used your hog already and they counter it, then you send in your eBarbs and let them just destroy that tower with the rage. You can also rage your hog at some point if you need to. It's surprisingly good. It allows him to get a few extra swings off, and it has the room to provide a lot of value. But don't waste it. Don't like send your rage in every time that you send your hog in, because most of the time you want to be using your hog, or excuse me, your rage with your eBarbs, because you want to gain that benefit of the eBarb's rage. And look at that one hog and the one eBarb just wrecking that tower there. They do so much damage together, but if you do send them all in together, keep in mind that they are susceptible to spells. So this is very much an aggressive deck. You've got so much synergy with like playing defense and then going into a really strong counter push, but you've also got, you know, a lot of aggression, like just kind of almost a bridge spammy like play with the hog and the eBarbs and everything. And I find that the minion horde, of course, synergizes decently well with the rage. Having all those minions, they do so much damage so quickly, so having them buffed by the rage spell, just, oh man, it just provides so much damage here. Alright, let's jump into this last match here and just kind of talk about my decision making now that we've kind of discussed all the intricacies of this deck. And as far as card replacements go, guys, just run eBarb's Rage with some sort of a mini tank, at least one spell, and then just whatever are your highest level cards. That's what I would highly recommend if you want to push on ladder right now. It's still very powerful. We got balance changes coming up real soon, so maybe they're going to get nerfed and this will have been a terrible investment, but hey, we'll see. Maybe I'll get lucky. Alright, here you can see that I'm providing pressure on the right there, and I just kind of let his miner go chip away at the tower there because I've already got 2 towers down, so even if he takes out my left tower, there's no way he's going to get my right tower. And as I often say, you can sometimes provide defense through offense by providing pressure on them or exerting pressure on them. It allows them to, or forces them rather, to defend, and then they can't turn their elixir into some sort of an offense. Alright guys, that is it for my personal eBarb's Rage deck. I'm really digging this deck right now. It's allowed me to push to my personal best at the moment, and I feel like it has the room to push even further. I'll continue to tweak it and try different versions, but again, the last thing I want to leave you with is use your highest level cards. That's the main thing behind this deck. If you're trying to push ladder, use those high level cards that you know how to work with. You gotta have some sort of a win condition and spell and synergy, but just slap all those high level cards together and figure it out. Learn how to play them really well, and then just dominate on the ladder. Alright guys, if you like this video, go ahead and leave a thumbs up, because every one of those helps out my channel to do better and get more views. Leave a comment, because I love talking to you guys and hearing what you have to say, and I respond to them all. And thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a good night.